like the three things, because the brain gets overloaded. So if you can kind of have that down in your talking points, highlight it. The where, I think it's awesome that you already have space, so you've got your where and you've got the legitimacy of, and this location matters because it's in proximity to the people who need it the most. I think that's powerful. And it put that out there. When, you guys have a strategy about when you want to do things, but also lay out that timeline of the 3 years with the person, with your curriculum, right? It's 3 years, team of 3 for 1 year.
Yeah, team of 3 for 2 year,
Okay.
2 year commitment to.
Okay. And lay out what you think that 2 years looks like and why it matters. Now, here's what I'll tell you. Science says that it takes 5 years of sustained sobriety to really enter long-term recovery. So if you can hit 5 years sober, your chances of relapsing go way down. There's a ton of science behind that. So, and those first 2 years are critical, as you can imagine. That's when the mountain is the steepest, if you want to think about it that way. And at 2 years, there's a little bit of a leveling off because you can take a deep breath. It's like, okay, but there's still so much to do. And a lot of that is just the brain healing and some other healing work that goes on. But yeah, 5 years is that marker. So if you can explain why you're choosing 2 years, what you want that 2 years to look like, and back that up with what you know about addiction. We know that the first 90 days are very shaky. If someone can get to 90, they're likely to get to 180. If they can get to 180, they're likely to get to 360. That's just what the science kind of explains. So the more you can sustain them to hit that and understand that those will be like walls that people will hit. The disease is so funny, it'll tell people, and not funny in a funny way, funny in a mean way. It waits for those moments and says, you got to 90 days, you got this. I mean, you don't need all those stupid meetings, You're smarter than this. And so if you make it through that moment with the disease, it comes back for you at 180. It keeps coming back for you, or it waits for something good to happen. Like you got an apartment, and it waits for the good, it waits for the bad, because it hates that you've left it. And that's why it's so vicious. It just keeps coming after people. And it's, when you get to that 5 years, it's almost like the disease doesn't go away, but it's quieter. That's the best way I can describe it. It's not so stinking noisy and in your ear all the time. You can hear it, but it's a little bit further in the background. So explain that, just explain that. And then just be careful with language, because again, if you say detox treatment, those are licensed services. People get very itchy about that. And that's not to say, if you're really passionate about that, then start looking at what does it mean to become a licensed treatment provider. And pursue it. Pull the standards down from the state, see what it would take. Because maybe you have those resources. Maybe the time is right for you to explore that. I don't know. But I would do the homework and see. And find that out. And if it's not, then don't use that language. Yeah. So I'll stop right here for a second because I could keep going, but I just want to check in with everybody and see if this is helpful or if have I gone overboard?
I think that's incredibly helpful.
I think I'm going to run out of paper. I'm glad I put that in here.
I brought some if you need some.
It really clarified a
Brought a
lot.
new calendar.
It put things into focus where we were just kind of throwing darts
Yeah.
at the map.
We knew we needed to do something more, but we didn't know exactly what it was that we had to,
And I can't believe it's that the 5 years that is that mark. I mean, I never had heard that in the entire time I've been in recovery.
So the first researcher to do that was a guy named George Valiant from Boston. And he did a long-term study of men who were in recovery, most of whom were connected in some way to Harvard, so take that with a grain of salt. However, he did a study that was 40 years long. He's one of the only researchers, because it's hard to get funded to study. And he was one of the first that noticed that after between 4 and 5 years, something changed. And people who were sober between 4 and 5 years started performing on time and test measures, like spelling and math, like a, quote, normal person. It took the brain that long. And so he was one of the first to start putting that out in the 80s. Like there's something to this long-term recovery thing. And now more research has started to come out. NIDA has been studying it, and they just put some stuff out last year saying, yep, there seems to be something about 5 years. And what was funny is Amethyst is a 4-year program, or was a 4-year program. Alvis House took it over, so I don't know what goes on there anymore. But when I was there, we were 4 years, and we kept thinking something's working, and we didn't know, and we didn't have the science at that time to back us up. We just knew. And then when it came out, we were like, well, we're pretty smart. Like, wow,
Don't
look
break
at
your arm.
us. Yeah, look at us, right? So yeah, I think anything that you can do, because I think that what you're proposing to do, from what I can understand, is going to be very meaningful. And people need a lot of support, as you know. And I think that by focusing on that and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay, so here's the triangle, you're trying to take care of their physical needs, right? And then moving up towards their spiritual needs, you're really approaching that from a way that should make a lot of sense in terms of healing. Put that information in there too.
Well,
Give yourselves credit for all that stuff.
That's really strong. I never even thought about Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah.
But yeah, once she mentioned it, I'm going,
That's
yeah,
why
of course.
That's why I'm here, Gail.
I mean, that's just like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So again, and this is the mistake most of us make. We don't give ourselves enough credit for like our methodology. There is a method to our madness, and just make sure you're spelling that out. Don't assume anything. Don't assume people get it. Don't assume that they understand. So I would say, like I said, when I read a faith-based approach, I think I know what you mean. And I'm already hearing people be like, oh, so they're just going to sit in church and sing. Isn't that nice?
They're going to pray with them.
Right.
They're getting
And
the
you know what,
snakes out.
honestly, sometimes that's what people have done. They've wanted money to fund a church service. And it's like, what's that based on, I've worked with enough people now who do faith-based work to understand that really the faith-based portion, it enhances what they were already doing. So they're following the best in terms of, treatment protocol, and then adding in the spiritual component. A lot of people don't know that. They think
But
it's
that's what-
just the spiritual.
That's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's a faith-based program, and the whole basis of Alcoholics Anonymous is to find a power greater than yourself. I mean, that's the whole basis.
Right. However, though, when you dig deeper, it's a ton of work.
Right.
Very practical work around self and others and relationships with others and service work and meaningful daily activity, like that kind of stuff. So again, a lot of people think like AA is just us sitting together and praying, and I've been in enough meetings.
No, it's not.
No, we open and close, okay?
Right.
With a prayer, and then we work our butts off for an hour.
Amen.
So that's what I want you to spell out. I don't want people assuming anything about what you're trying to do. Tell them. Don't let them assume, because they won't assume the best. It's just not natural.
I missed your intro.
Yes.
What do you do? This is brilliant. You're very well spoken about it.
Thanks.
Putting it out there, breaking it down for us, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
Sure they do.
So, and you didn't get credit. So I've been a social worker my whole career. My bachelor's, master's, PhD are all in social work, and I spent my entire career working in addiction treatment. I worked at Amethyst for about 13 years. It's a women's treatment center downtown. And then for the past 5 years, I've owned my own company. I work exclusively with nonprofits and county governments to really help build their programs, do a lot of grant writing, a lot of evaluation, a lot of writing if people need that, or I'll do some boots on the ground work of being working with the staff or working with the clients, doing clinical development, that kind of thing, and then conference planning, and then websites, because why not, right? Just throw it in there.
Why not?
Landscaping, I mean, just add it, right. Repaving driveways, I don't know.
Oh, now she's
She's good.
Now she's speaking your
Just
language.
saying, you never know, you never know.
Puts it in there that's a
So,
retirement plan.
Yeah, my husband worked with Kale, and so that's how we became friends. And then I met Nancy through the work with the opiate task force with our coroner. So that's kind of how. I
Yeah, you're
became
very,
opiate.
very knowledgeable.
Oh, thanks.
And
Fill in the
these are the
gaps.
tips that we needed.
Yeah.
Because we knew that our paper
Yeah.
didn't have what it needed,
Right.
but we couldn't, yeah.
We didn't know what.
You know what? First draft of anything is the hardest. And it's so much easier to come in and do what I just did and edit and cut it up and slice it and dice it. But the first draft of anything, you just got to get it all out of your brain.
That's
We're gonna
right.
dump it.
And that's how it's writing anything.
You gotta get the framework.
Oh
down.
my gosh, yes. And that's the hardest thing to do.
Oh
is
yeah,
get
the first
it
4
down.
weeks were spaghetti. I mean,
Well, I'm picturing you trying to write a training.
Well, I'm training volunteers.
Yeah.
So I know what knowledge and skills they need in order
Yeah.
to be able to function in that role. Okay. I'm not training them to be treatment providers
Yeah.
or anything. They're come alongside volunteers.
But just in your own
So-
writing, I'm just imagining the amount of editing you do as you're like, oh, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's
Yeah.
taken a
What he's
while.
put together is really good.
but it's always hard to get thoughts down on paper, to refine them, and to decide, what do we want to say, how do we want to say it, and, who are we communicating to? And that's why I don't think one document fits all.
Amen.
Right.
I think you really need two. One is for that funder, or the policymaker, yep, and the other is more of an educational piece,
Right.
where I'm gonna engage volunteers, caring others, people who are gonna read about us and say, what do they do? But may not be ready to take action. And then, my funder document is, I'm asking for time, talent, treasure, with preference on treasure, just to be real honest. I like money, because it
That
allows
brings
me
me
to
to
do.
another-
We're going to recruit the talent for the volunteers.
Right.
Or hire them, whatever.
Right,
But yeah, and I'm thinking the education piece needs a significant portion of marketing and promotions as well. Not just education, because we are gonna have to drum up some volunteers here and there.
yeah, absolutely.
I don't think they'll be beating down our doors saying, I want to work with homeless drug addicts, put me in the,
I say, but yeah, when we
But-
get the document created, then that's gonna help us with our selling, because right now, our answer is too fuzzy, because they're gonna say, well, what
Yeah.
exactly is it you do? Woo! But when we have that document, and then create our elevator
Yeah.
speech,
And
then
start-
we'll be able to do that.
with the right words.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think
Wording
too,
matters,
start
yeah.
thinking about what it costs to run, even just if you start with your Friday night program, if you were to have to purchase everything, and maybe you are, I just don't know, what would that look like?
Right.
And that's how you begin to build your budget based on actual, not just projection. Because I've worked with people, I'm like, what do you need? They're like, $100,000. And it always makes me think of, if you watched Austin Powers, Dr. Evil, 1 million, right? And you're just like,
No, laugh at it.
you're just pulling